Okay, hi there, and welcome to a video on poverty and inequality. So much to cover in this topic. It's a big one, both for micro and for macro, and especially with reference to development economics. But what I've done is I've made an A to Z of some of the key concepts and measurements and examples to help you along the way. A stands for absolute poverty, which some people now call extreme poverty. And absolute poverty is best defined as a severe and persistent deprivation of basic human needs. The world actually reached the first Millennium Development Goal to cut absolute poverty in half by 2015. They did that 5 years ahead of schedule. According to the latest figures, the percentage of the world's population living on less than $1.90 a day, PPP, was 10%. That's down from nearly 36% in 1990. However, most of the extreme poor live in sub-Saharan Africa, and the World Bank are projecting that by 2030, nearly 85-90% of extreme poverty will be in that country. B stands for benefit cap. So the UK government has brought in a welfare reform. They've brought in a benefit cap, which limits the amount of certain benefits that a working age household can receive. Any household getting more than the cap has their housing benefit cut back to bring them back within the limit. In 2016, the benefit cap initially was £26,000 a year. That's been reduced to £23,000 for people living in London, and the benefit cap is £20,000 for those living outside London. Guardian article here arguing that the vast majority of those affected by the benefit cap are single mothers. I've chosen conspicuous consumption for C. Conspicuous consumption, otherwise known as positional consumption, is spending designed to impress others rather than something that is wanted for its own sake. And it was a term introduced by Thorstein Veblen in his book in 1899, The Theory of the Leisure Class. Loads of examples, of course: big yachts, massive barbecues. The fashion industry must be a good example to use of conspicuous consumption. Of course, big issues, big debates at the moment about the carbon emissions from the fashion industry as a whole. Article here in the Independent suggesting that the fashion industry accounts for nearly 1 in 10 of the world's 10% of the world's carbon emissions, much bigger than aviation. Disposable income is a key measure of income, and it is income adjusted for direct taxes, so your income tax and national insurance you pay, and also for the welfare benefits received by a household. So basically it's the amount of money that people have left for spending and saving after tax and benefits. And this flow chart shows how we get to disposable income. It's gross income minus direct taxes and local taxes, including council tax. The Gini coefficient is a key measure of income and wealth inequality. It's a commonly used measure. It can vary between 0, where there's perfect equality, and 100, or 1 if you want to use that, where it's perfectly unequal, complete inequality. Here's the data for the UK, including 2018, and it shows that actually if you look at disposable income inequality in the last 12 years has actually fallen. The Gini coefficient for the UK was 0.33 in 2018. Human capital, H for human capital, hugely important, particularly on the supply side of any country, and I would suggest it's a massively important concept to be aware of when you're writing about and analysing and evaluating development economics. Human capital is a measure of people's skills, knowledge, talent, abilities, social attributes, including health, their experience. And if you want to increase per capita incomes and reduce extreme poverty and lift a country to higher levels of development, you must improve human capital, hopefully in a sustainable and inclusive way. The data I'm showing here is the countries at the bottom of the HDI ranking in 2017. Just look at the big gap between expected years of schooling, starting at the age of 5, and the mean years of schooling. Of course, the actual evidence is that these figures are way lower. And in Niger average number of years of schooling just 2 years. M is for median income. I've got two M's for you. The first one is median. This is quite important because you often get some data on incomes. So the median, don't forget, is the income, the amount that divides an income distribution into two equal groups. And the chart here shows median and mean for the UK in 2018. So the median income, £27,300. The mean, £32,676. So it clearly indicates the skewness of the distribution. The mean is significantly greater than the median. The greatest number of households, the modal number, falls into the 17,000 to 18,000 bracket, which is in the third decile. So median splits the income distribution into two equal groups. That's median. This is quite important if you get a question on poverty. It's a good evaluation point is to say that poverty is not just about income. So the United Nations now publishes a multi-dimensional poverty index made up of 10 indicators. It's a development from the Human Development Index. So as you know, HDI has three components: health, education and income. Multi-dimensional poverty then goes into deeper detail. So it's not just about income, it's about sanitation, it's about access to shelter, information, basic healthcare, basic food and those kind of things. Multi-dimensional poverty. Original income is the income from original sources. So that is for most people, that's their wage or their salary from their job. And if you look at the chart here, the people in the bottom quintiles have very little original income. Perhaps they're retired or unemployed on very low incomes. People at the top quintile have a very high original income. But notice that the disposable income varies. So for original income, their disposable income is greater because of tax and welfare, whereas for the fourth and the top quintiles, their disposable income is well below their original income. So there's obviously some redistribution of income taking place there. The Palma Ratio, P, the Palma Ratio, is a good alternative measure of income inequality, and it's the ratio of the richest 10% of the population's share of income divided by the poorest 40% share. So it's the income of the top 10% divided by the income of the bottom 40%. Now I'm showing you here the data for the OECD countries, the rich, advanced, industrialized economies, including the UK. What is striking about the Palma Ratio data is just how unequal South Africa is. It's the highest Palma Ratio in the world. It's 7. So the richest 10% in South Africa have 7 times the share of income than do the bottom 40%. Costa Rica, Mexico, Chile, Turkey will have high levels of inequality. The UK, can you spot it there? The UK also has a fairly high level on the Palma Ratio. Another P is the poverty trap. Worth discussing. Any question on disincentives, any question on inequality. The poverty trap is a situation in which somebody's income is offset by a consequent loss of benefits. So they might take an extra job, for example, but they start paying tax and they start losing benefits. In theory, potentially leaving them no better off or only marginally better off. And many people are in the poverty trap in the UK. R is for relative poverty. So relative poverty is different to absolute poverty, and it's to do with where you are within the distribution of income. So typically we define relative poverty for households as when a household is earning only 60% of median earnings at the time. You have to adjust for household size, because if you've got a bigger household, their incomes and their needs will differ. But in the UK, for example, if your income is below £304 per week, that means you fall below the relative or the official poverty line. A 2-parent family in the UK needs to earn about £20,000 a year to stay out of relative poverty. A single parent with 2 kids, they probably need about £1,300 a month to stay out of relative poverty. U is for Universal Basic Income, or UBI. Now, this is really interesting. A lot of people are now pushing the idea of a universal basic income, which is when all adults receive, if you like, a no strings attached amount of money per week or per month from the state to cover the basic cost of living. So the amount paid is universal, it's to everybody, regardless of their income and wealth. Kenya is trialling this in a developing context. Finland trialed the universal basic income for jobless people. They found that people were happier, but it didn't necessarily increase their rate of employment. But again, there are topic videos on all of these things, worth searching. Universal basic income as an alternative, for example, to the minimum wage. Wealth is different to income. So wealth is the value of a stock of your assets. It could be your house, it could be your personal pension, it could be the savings you have in a building society or a bank. It could be a marketable asset such as an antique or an old car. So wealth is a stock of assets, and wealth typically is less equally distributed than income. Oxfam every year publish this famous report where they look at the richest people in the world and compare with how much they own compared to the poorest 50. According to Oxfam, billionaire fortunes increased by 12% last year, $2.5 billion a day, whereas 3.8 billion people who make up the poorest half of the world saw their wealth decline. So Oxfam was saying that the world's 26 richest people now own as much as the poorest 50%. Another W for you to finish is working poverty. So working poverty is an increasingly important issue in the labour market, particularly in the United States and also in the UK. And working poverty is a situation where you have a family with at least one person in a job, in paid work, but they have a household income that keeps them below the official relative poverty line, below 60% of median income. And this chart is quite important. If you look at the blue line here, nearly 3/4 of children in poverty live in a household where at least one adult is in work. So maybe that's low wage employment or part-time or unsecure work, which means they're not earning enough to lift themselves out of poverty. And finally, a 0 hours contract. So we have gone today from A to Z. A 0 hours contract, hugely important if you want to talk about the flexible labour market, is an employment contract under which the worker is not guaranteed hours of work and is paid only really for the work carried out. There was a big rise in the number of people on a 0 hours contract, which you can see on this chart here, from about 0.5% to nearly 3% in 2016. That figure has come down a little bit, so about 2.5% of people have a job with a 0 hours contract. And in terms of the number of people, again, you can see the big shift here, particularly from 2012 onwards. So it peaked at just under 1 million people. The figure for the exam is that 800,000 people roughly in the UK last year were on a 0 hours contract. Now, huge amount of separate topics there: causes of inequality, policies towards poverty, loads to cover. If you want some extra resources, some videos, some quizzes, some notes, some presentations on all aspects of poverty and inequality, then please just point your smartphone camera at the QR code and that will take you to the Tutor2 landing page for this big, important topic. Okay, thanks a lot. See you next time.